Before our guests join us, I'd like to read one review from our listeners. A wonderful and inspiring podcast by Vanster75. This is a wonderful and inspiring podcast for not just Asian women, but for all men and women of all races. I learned a lot from these wonderful guests and their stories. I'm grateful for your kind word, Vanster75. Please help us spread the message by keep listening and sharing this podcast. We appreciate for your support and review. Now, please help me welcome our guest for today. Welcome to the Asian Women of Power podcast. We are going to have a special interview today with a retired executive for a high-tech company in the Bay Area. I'd like to introduce Mr. G. Mr. G retired in 2008 from Cisco System, where he was the vice president and general manager of the data center business unit. He joined Cisco in 2004 through the acquisition of Andiamo Systems, where he was the president and CEO. His career spans 35 years in Silicon Valley, working as an executive in large Fortune 50 companies as well as small startup teams. He holds advanced degrees from Stanford University and the Harvard Business School. No one is more qualified to answer some of the questions and concerns about the Asian Americans' glass ceilings, which we call the bamboo ceiling, and other Asian American issues that we are experiencing today. Please help me welcome Mr. Buck G. Hi, Buck.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about you, your family, your childhood, and your role model when you grew up.
Well, I'll start this way. So I was born in Northern California in a small town called Oroville. My father had immigrated from China in 1937. Was actually went through Angel Island and was a paper son, if you know what that story is, and he was claimed American citizen. He went back to China and got my mother, and my mother came in 1947, and then I was born in 1949 and grew up in Oroville. Then went to college at Stanford, got my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering as a computer designer, worked for HP for a while as a computer designer, and designed a computer for HP, and then decided I wanted to go back to business school and learn business. So I went to Harvard Business School, came back and graduated in 1980, and then worked in really a series of startups, 6 startups. 3 failed, had 1 IPO and was acquired by Cisco twice in 1993 and in 2004. And I after 2004, I became division manager, essentially a business unit manager at Cisco, and then retired in 2008.
Wow, impressive. Thank you.
I was lucky.
So you think it's mostly luck, or is it persistent?
It's a lot of skill, but I'd say it's a 60% skill and work and 40% luck. I mean, there are a lot of people in Silicon Valley who are smart as me or smarter than me and worked harder than me, but their startups failed for various reasons, and I was fortunate enough to have some success.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You can't get success. You can't take success to your head, and get a big head from that, and you can't let failure get to you too much. So I mean, it's again, you do the best you can, and then you're either lucky or not.
Yeah. I think most people think that failure is that they fail, right? But rather than when I think successful people, when they see failure as an experience. Oh, I tried this. Okay, it didn't work, right? Rather than I failed it. I failed these things, right? So it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, that actually is certainly in Silicon Valley. Failure is not all that bad. Um, as long as people, as long as people have seen that you've done good work, make good judgments, and enough people have failed that they understand that trying is what you need to do, and if you fail, can you get up from that failure and learn from the failure? And I think that's seen as a positive. Failing and giving up is that's failure. But failing and understanding what you did to fail, or in that failure, and then learning from that experience and moving on, that's what people are looking for. Can you do that?
Mm-hmm. So how did you have that positive mentality? Was it when you grew up, your parents are nurturing, supportive, allow you to try many things, or they are very controlling. They say, nope, this is the way that you have to do it and do not fail. How did you become who you are today?
Um, I with regard to my parents, um, I think they were fairly relaxed in their parenting. I think they did not force us to do anything. Um, Part of the reason is I think we grew up in a town where we were one of the few Chinese families in town, and I think it's different when there are other families and people compare you to other people.
Mm.
So there's familial pressure that your kids are doing well and that your people reflected in their kids. And because we're one of the few there, I think they had no one to compare against, and we did well enough. We did well enough. They were happy. They didn't insist on getting all A's. They took the approach, if you got an A, you got a quarter. So which in those days was a lot. So it wasn't punishment or being strict, but certainly they wanted to be successful and go to college. And the assumption was we were all going to go to college. So and my father came from rural China, in southern China, and so did my mother, in a rural village, and they had probably the equivalent of high school education. So the fact that we would be going to go to college, I think, was all they really wanted us to do, right? As a measure of success, and that's very traditional. So that's my parents, and so they didn't understand, and I'll say, and they didn't understand a lot of things that people understand now, because it was a lot less stressful to go to college way back when in the 60s compared to now. So when I got into Stanford or into Harvard, I don't think my father or mother understood that they were elite universities. They were just another place to go to school. So there was no pressure on us to do anything other than go to school and do well in school. That's all they wanted.
So did you get the whole scholarship?
To Stanford, I did, yeah. To Stanford. Also, back then it was a lot cheaper. It was still expensive, but I will tell you that it was at Stanford, the quarterly tuition when I started was $525.
Oh, wow.
So it was still a lot of money back then, but it's not like today where it's, I think it's over $50,000 for the year.
A year, yeah.
So for Stanford, it was like $1,500 for the year, and the dorm costs were about the same amount. So it cost about $3,000 to go to Stanford for the year. $3,500 I think was the total per year. So a lot easier back then, but even then, I mean, my father owned a Chinese restaurant, so it wasn't like he was professional or anything, but it certainly was self-employed and was doing okay. So, but I had a scholarship, so it paid for my tuition. So I went to Stanford because it would cost essentially the same as it cost to go to Cal at the time. Mm-hmm. Cal, just in comparison, the dorm fees were about the same at Cal, and the tuition at Cal, their fees were $50 a quarter. So I figured it didn't make any difference where I went to school in terms of the cost my father. So I went to Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the difference my father did.
So, did you stay at dorm or you go back
Yeah,
and forth every day? You live at home?
No, home was in Orville, Northern California. So I stayed in the dorm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Orville is north of Sacramento, so it's about a 3-hour drive.
Okay.
To Stanford.
Okay. So your name is very unique, Buck G. It's not the typical Asian name that I'm familiar with. Do you know what it means?
No, it is. My first name is it's the anglicized way of saying my Chinese name, and so my name in Chinese is G Buck Joan, and so my family is G. My brothers are all generation name. They're all Buck, and my given name is Joan. But I have a cousin with the same name as me, and he spells his name P-A-K, Puck.
Mm.
So it's the same name, same character. But when the doctor wrote it down, what's your kid's name? He spelled it B-U-C-K. It's phonetic.
Wow. Okay. Got it. Yes, it's a very unique name for me, and it stand out really. So you probably there's only one Buck G, right, in America.
Actually,
in the
that's
world.
not true because there was another person with the same name somewhere in the Bay Area in Hayward. I know because I got this obituary notice for Buck G, and I said, "Wait, I'm not dead."
Oh my God, that's funny. It's a few years ago I thought, oh, there's nobody named like mine, Kimchi Chow. There's nobody,
I
right?
wouldn't think so either. Yeah.
But I don't know why. Just recently I searched on Facebook. There are a few names. I don't know whether it's a fake profile or not. And it's strange, very weird. I start seeing Kimchi Chow somewhere else, and it's not a female. It's not me. So I'm claiming now, right? I say it's not me. If you don't see my face on my I don't live in California, then that's not me.
Okay.
All right. So you live in Silicon Valley for more than 3 decades and have worked during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Did you experience any discrimination because you are Asian?
No, I never did. I don't think. I think there's in Silicon Valley firms and technology, they don't. There's no discrimination per se. I make this comment. There is implicit bias, but there's no discrimination. It really is. People talk about a meritocracy in Silicon Valley, and by and large it is. So no, I didn't see any. I did, however, and to the point about the implicit bias, I say part of my success was understanding implicitly, and I didn't think about this until I got involved in diversity questions later on in my life. I made it clear that I knew there was a stereotype of being Chinese and what we were capable of, not capable of, and so I made a point of making it clear that I was not the stereotype, and I tell a story all the time to illustrate that, so they knew who it was. So I was working for a company called National Semiconductor back in 1980, and I was in a meeting one day with Pierre Lamond, who at the time was the vice president. He was from France and head of the group, group VP, and somebody from Houston who was headed up our factory there, and somebody from Boston. I was a product manager back then. I just started at National. And so before the meeting, Pierre was talking and just talking before the meeting starts. He said, so I'm from France. I lived in Paris, grew up in Paris, and blah, blah, blah. And, And so where are you all from? And so the guy from Texas says, I grew up in Houston. I'm born and raised Texan. And the guy from Boston grew up in Boston. Okay. And I said, so that makes me the only native here because I was born in California. So, because I know what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear that, I'm Chinese and my parents came over and blah, blah, blah. But I made the point that I'm American. So they made clear that I'm not who they think they were. So that's always been my my implicit feeling is that, I am different than the stereotype, and I have to make clear that I'm not who they think they are, because they assume I'm one thing. I want to make clear I'm something else.
So do you see yourself as an Asian American, or American?
So kind of, so I'll say all the above. I think I'll say it this way. Am I Chinese? Not exactly. Am I Asian? Not exactly. Am I American? Not exactly. I actually, I never really think of myself per se as Asian. You really think of yourself as Chinese, right? You're ethnic. Although as a community, you think yourself as Asian. And I never thought of myself as anything other than who I am. And so, to the point that people think I am or see myself as Chinese or not Chinese, or American, not American. I'm sort of all the above and none of the above, and I'll make two stories. Right. One story is that, so in high school I was a student body president in my high school, and that I could become student body president because I was friends with all the cliques in high school. In high school they have little cliques, the jocks, the athletes, the scholars, the geeks, the social guys, the drunks, and the party people. And I was, because growing up in a small town, I was friends with everybody. Okay, I was friends with all the groups, because I was never seen as being a geek or an athlete or a party person or I was a little bit of everything. And so I was all the above, but yet none of the above. It was really not in any group per se. Okay. So and that was me. So I was and I was friends with everybody. The other story I like to tell, though, so I'm not exactly any group. Okay. The other story I like to tell about myself and relative to what I'm doing now is a story when I was at Cisco. And so one of the things I did is when I began to look at Asians and the fact that very few Asians were in executive management at Cisco. In fact, when I was there, I think part of my story, I got involved in Asian diversity because I realized one day in 2006 that I was the only in the engineering group. I was the only Asian VP. I was the only Chinese VP. Out of 140 VPs, I was the only one. And so I said, I got to fix this. And so one of the things I did is get all the directors together. So I was a vice president, and I called a meeting of the directors and had a series of meetings every month to talk about things. And one day I invited Charlie Giancarlo, who was at that time headed all engineering for Cisco, to talk to the directors. And Charlie said, he walked up to me and says, Buck, thank you for inviting me and to talk to your community. And I thought, I just stopped me for a second. I said, I've never thought of myself as this part of this community. Even though I was doing something for the community, and that made me realize, in a way, I had a responsibility as a role model for the Chinese American Asian community, but yet I never thought myself part of it. So I hope that explains kind of when your question, who am I? I am who I am, and it's a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, that brought I think quite a few of us, either we have the feeling of we are not good enough, or we don't belong here. Here means United States.
You
right?
think so? Really?
I mean, do I think so? Yes,
Yeah.
I do think so. There's quite a few of us feel that way. I used to feel that way, as I don't belong here, because when I live here, right, I moved here from Vietnam. I came here as a refugee. So I went to college here, and I went to work here in computer science, computer companies. And at work, they encourage you to speak up, right? To give ideas and things like that. So it's like American way, right?
Right.
So I did that, but when I came home, it's the opposite. I'm not allowed to express my opinion. Okay, so I feel a conflict, constant conflict. Say, who am I? Do I belong here? Right? I'm not American. I look at my mirror and say, I'm not American. I'm not white. Right? I speak with accent. Right? So I'm not American. So I don't belong here. And I'm not totally Asian or Vietnamese, because I don't think like that anymore. Right? So yeah, it's and I thought, oh, just me feeling it. But as I talked to more women, Asian women, and especially the one who are a little bit verbose, like less me, like me, right? Who want to be independent, who want to express themselves. They feel the same way. They say they don't belong here. So I realized that yes, majority of us Asian immigrant, we live here, and sometimes we feel that we don't belong here. So that's what I create my own company, and I want to share that you belong to where you live. So let's combine, rather than say we are no longer Asian, pure Asian. We're not American. Let's make us like Asian American, right? Because we have a little bit of each side. We are influenced by the thinking of both cultures, and let's embrace it. Let's accept it, embrace it, and find the way that we enjoy, the way that we want to live, and create that culture for us.
So I agree with you, and to the extent that that we identify as Asian American, that's good. I always say this. I mean, I can apply this. I'm me. I'm who I am, there are different sides of me, different times. At work, myself at work is different than myself at home. And I talk to people who work for me at work when I was working differently than I talk to my kids. But does that make me inauthentic? I mean, I'm a parent and a boss. A parent doesn't act like a boss. When you're a wife or a husband, the way you interact with your spouse is different than you interact with people at work. So and what's expected of you is different. So given the context of who you are and where you're at, you should be whoever you need to be in that context. And there's not necessarily conflict as long as, and they say as long as the internal values of what's right and wrong and internal value of what's moral and immoral is the same. And so you play the same rules, you just act a little differently in your context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that perspective. So tell us about your professional journey. How did you become the CEO and president of Andiamo Systems? Andiamo? Okay.
Andiamo.
Andiamo.
Andiamo was a strange one. So I'll give you the general story. General story is that so I've never looked at I've never looked at my journey as being a looking for a career. Okay, I was fortunate enough to be good enough and to get enough schools to be able to make a lot of career decisions on my own. And my view has always been, and my own view has always been to challenge myself to do things that I don't know how to do, or something I want to learn to do. So I've always been challenged by either new markets or technology or something that I've never done before, and just challenging myself to see if I could do it. Okay. And it's my own personal challenge, and part of it is, and that's really what drives me. And again, I'll tell you a funny story that illustrates this more than anything else. And it's self like this. So when I was at no, I'll tell you, when I was in the 5th grade, no, 7th grade, 7th grade. Sorry. So the teacher said in English, she said, okay, for this semester, I want you to read books. And if you read 300 pages of books, you get an A. You have to write a book report. If you read 200 pages of books, you get a B. And if you only read 100, you get a C.
Okay.
Okay. So I said, all right. So in that case, I better read 300 pages. Well, I did, and write a book report. Well, I did that in the first week. Okay. And so I said, oh, okay, now what am I going to do? So let me see. Okay, let me see if I can read 500 pages. Okay, so second week I read another 200 pages. I got 500. And I said, okay, now what am I going to do? I said, what if I get to 1,000?
Wow.
Now I've got 1,000. I said, all right, I wonder if I can get to 10,000. So I read 10,000 pages.
Wow. And
wound up with 15,000 pages in the semester. Now, there was no reason for me to do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. No one told me to do that. But it's a question, how much can I do? How hard can I push myself to do something that I don't think I can do? Okay. And all that has or if somebody tells me I can't do something, okay,
you're gonna show them, right?
No. I mean, in a positive way. So when I was at HP one time, I won't tell you the whole thing, but I was working at HP on a software project, and on a Friday, this problem came up, and my boss told me, "We got no time to solve this problem, so let's just ignore it, go on, right?" Well, he said it can't be done. I said, "Oh yeah." So I worked the weekend, and Monday morning I showed him the software, and it solved the problem. So when somebody challenged me to do something, it can't be done. So challenging myself to see if something, is always what I do. So anyway, when I got back from Harvard, I basically joined a startup, or headed up a startup with some of my friends, because it was, and this is in the 80s, and it was getting into a new field that was just growing, and so doing something new and making contribution was something interesting. And that, after a few years, failed, but then I did another one, and that failed, and then finally did another one, and it succeeded. It was acquired by Cisco. So every time, but I was always looking for something new that I hadn't done before. Okay, in terms of something, for example, I joined a startup in '94 to do cable modems, and this cable broadband. It's not called broadband, right? So Comcast broadband that you have in your home, mm-hmm. right? In 1994, no one thought it could be done. In fact, AT&T, the phone companies, were saying it's impossible. So I joined a company to do it, and we did technology to do it. So I was one of the first. I think our company was one of the first 3 or 4 companies invent technology. Then, as what happens is when you invent technology, then big companies like Cisco or Intel make the chip switch, make your $300 product now doable in $50. And so, you invent technology, but something like that. And so we went, started the company, built technology, went from $0 to $200 million, and then when the big guys came in, it went from $200 to $0. So.
Oh my God.
That's what happened.
Okay.
And then on and on. So what drove me was just challenge.
You motivate by challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So when you were the CEO and president at Andiamo Systems,
Mm-hmm.
who did you report to?
So it was a weird situation. Basically, it was actually a spin out. It was actually a spin out of Cisco. The way it worked. Some group of people spun out of Cisco, and a friend of mine who actually was in Cisco, a senior vice president of Cisco, spun this group out as a startup to do something. And so he recruited me to be CEO. So although I had a board, so I reported to the board. Basically, it was really two Cisco senior VPs and an outside investor. So I reported to the board.
Okay, you report to the board, but you run the whole company.
Basically, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So when the company is sold,
then we acquired 2004.
This is interesting. You say employee at Cisco, they leave Cisco, they spin off, right? They spin off from Cisco, so they leave Cisco, they go out and start their own company, and later on, Cisco bring them back, buy them back.
A spin out, and then a spun in. So,
okay.
So as I recall, 40 people was the engineering team that was spun out of Cisco, and then we eventually grew to about 310-ish or so.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were acquired by Cisco, we were about 310 people. So we only had the condition was you couldn't hire any more people out inside Cisco. So basically, the 40 people spun out, and then I became CEO of that, and then we grew the company, and then the 300 people were acquired by Cisco. So when they spun out of Cisco, they were not working for Cisco at that point. They were working for Andiamo, and then we spun back in and became Cisco employees.
Okay. So were you involved in the selling of this company to Cisco?
Oh yeah.
You involved in the negotiation and things like that?
The negotiation actually done up front. What happened was, without going into a lot of detail, when Cisco spun this group out, okay, there was a pre-negotiated deal to acquire the company. They had essentially first rights to acquire the company. So at a certain point, they had a right to basically buy us at a ratio of this revenue at the time. So it was all pre-negotiated. So negotiated ahead of time, and then the details were negotiated at that time. And so I negotiated both deals. Yeah, it was complicated.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow, I never thought of that.
And Cisco's done a couple like that, actually. Cisco has done, I think, at least 3 like that, and maybe 4.
Okay. So the idea of this company is not coming from working on a project for Cisco, right? It's something else different.
Totally.
On May 31st, 2018, you wrote an article on Harvard Business Review with the title, Asian Americans are the least likely group in the U.S. to be promoted to management.
Mm-hmm.
Please share with us what prompts you to write this article.
So I've been working on the Asian glass ceiling since 2006, and I'll give you some history here. Then I actually want to show you a bit of data. just to back up the article, because when I wrote the article for the Harvard Business Review, there were some charts to back up those claims, and they didn't want to publish the charts. So anyway, but it was there. Anyway, so what started my whole journey here was that one day in 2006, working one Sunday morning, my desk, I suddenly realized I was the only East Asian vice president in engineering. And so I wrote Charlie Giancarlo, who was the head of engineering. I said, Charlie, am I the only one? The only Chinese one? And Charlie wrote back and said, Buck, you are the only one. And I've often seen the same thing and wondered why. Can you find out what's going on, what we can do about it? So what that led to was finding out that in an organization that is roughly 60% Asian, or in engineering, 60% Asian, 60. Only at the time, only 15% of the high potential pipeline or identified potential leaders were Asian in engineering, 15%. And when you looked at the vice presidents in engineering, there were 104 vice presidents, and I was the only Chinese in an organization that's roughly 20-25% Chinese. And when you looked at directors, one level down from these senior directors, it was 7%. So 20% in general population, 7% of directors, and 1% of the VPs. And when I raised the issue inside Cisco, they said, we never had thought about this as a problem. And John Chambers, when we talked to Chambers about this, said, Buck, you're right, we have a problem here. You guys tell me how you fix it. I don't know what the problem is. You tell me what the problem is, and we'll support you and fund it to fix it. So we had concluded. I had concluded, talking to a lot of people inside Cisco, a lot of Chinese inside Cisco directors and managers, that the reason they weren't getting promoted was they didn't understand what it took to be a general manager. They didn't understand what it meant to be an executive. And so I tried to find training programs to teach them how to be executive, but there was nothing there. So actually, I created in 2010 a program at Stanford Business School, advanced leadership program for Asian American executives, to really teach what it takes. And what happens is that people are looking for certain executive level skills that many Asian Americans don't value, and they don't work at, and they don't develop. And that's our problem. The other problem is that people don't expect that of many Asian Americans. So people don't see that, and there's an implicit bias that Asian Americans, both men and women, are not fit to be leaders. And in a lot of cases, that can't true. I mean, they don't see that potential. They don't expect to see that potential. What happens is they may see it, but they tend to ignore it because they don't expect it of you. Okay. So that's their problem. Our problem is that to a large extent, we reinforce that image of non-leadership with our behavior. Okay. In fact, I just saw a study that said actually that of women, saying that all the race and genders, Asian women are considered the least fit to be leaders, and that's the implicit assumption. I don't have to pull up. I don't have to show you the article, but that was a Stanford report that just was published, I think, a couple months ago. But I saw the same thing myself, and the best example I have of that in terms of expectation of leadership is that when I sent an email out to these 35, East Asian directors, I said, let's have a meeting to talk about this. I got 2 emails back. I got emails back from 2 directors who said, "Do we have permission to talk about this topic?" And my immediate reaction was, the reason they're not high potential is you don't ask for permission to talk about something like that. If you have to ask, you're a senior director, you're making $200,000 a year, you're managing a group of 100, 150 people. These kinds of issues are your responsibility to talk about, not ask. You don't need permission to talk about it. If that's the attitude, then you really aren't going to be an executive, because when you're a VP, you don't ask permission. You just do what you need to do. Because what you have to understand is you have to know what's good enough for the company, and you do what's good for the company. You don't ask somebody permission to do that for the company, because that's your responsibility to know that. So if you don't understand that, then you're going to fail as a general manager. You're going to fail as an executive unless you understand that. So that's a simple example of kind of thing people are looking for. If they're always asking for permission, they ask for permission for this. What do they always ask for permission? They want approval and permission. They want to be told what to do. When you're a GM, you're not told what you do. You tell people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's what I was looking for, and I didn't see that in a lot of the directors at Cisco. So that's why I started the Stanford program, to teach them those are things they have to understand.
So the programs that you share, so you were the one who created that program in Stanford?
Yeah, basically what happened was I and a friend of mine, Wes Hong, so I was who was at the time a VP at IBM, went to Stanford and said, we need this kind of training for Asian American leaders, and we characterized it. We characterized the typical kinds of problems that we saw in our population, in our director level population. Okay. And so Stanford agreed, the business school agreed to put it on. And so it's really a Stanford program. And so it's taught by the business school. It's a 1-week program. And Wes and I are still there every year and we sit in all the classes and act as mentors to the people. And so it is a regular business school program that teaches leadership. We also bring in the dinners and in the evenings, Asian American leaders from the Bay Area, CEOs in the Bay Area, to talk to them, and so they tell them what it's like being a CEO. So to reinforce the lesson during the day of things you do, and so they actually see somebody who actually can do it. And the reason we do that is, and we actually bring a lot of our friends in, our VP friends, is to be sure people understand there's no singles prototype for being an executive CEO. You don't have to be the tall, white, blonde man to do it. Okay, but you do have to learn certain character. You have to be able to do certain things. So they can see Asian men and women who are at that level, and they are much more like us than the tall white man. But at least they're doing the same kinds of things. You have to be able to make those decisions. You have to be able to do things. Be a leader that you can't be. That's different than being a middle manager. It really is. So that's what we're trying to do there, is have them understand that it can be done. But there's certain things that many of them are doing or not doing, so they to get them into position.
You say, how long ago is this program start?
The first program was in 2010, so it runs once a year, except for 1 year. Actually, Chevron wanted to buy the whole class. We had a different second class that year, different Chevron, and Chevron sent 40 people, Asians at that class, 20 from the U.S. and 20 from Asia, actually.
Okay, yeah, I saw the cost is around $13,000 for 6 days, right?
Sunday through Friday. Yeah, Sunday through Friday. Yep.
Right. Okay, so it's been like almost 9 years. The program.
Yeah, this will be the 10th. Actually, this will be 11th class this year. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And every year we get about 40 to 50. And they're directors. Half are directors, VPs, or general managers.
Mm-hmm.
The other half is typically one level below that. So either senior managers who are looking to be directors, or directors looking to be VPs.
Mm-hmm. So who will pay for this program? Does a company sponsor it?
Company pay for it, yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that there's some kind of traits or value that is required from these individuals in order to reach the C-level. What are they?
Actually, I want to answer that question. Before that, I want to just share this one chart, if with your permission.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And this chart is right here. And the reason, let me explain the chart. It's a little complicated, but it maybe not so. It is what I call the management parity index, and the management parity index is very simple. It's percentage of managers by race divided by percentage of non-managers. So it looks at really what percentage of people are moving from one level to the no level. What you'd like to see, for example, if Asians are, let's say, 30% of the population, at parity you'd be 30% of managers, right? And so that'd be at parity or 1. What this says is that if you look at 2016, Asians are 0.68, or they're 32% below parity. That is 32% underrepresented relative to numbers in the workforce. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that very little has changed from 2007 to 2016. That is to say, we're underrepresented in middle management compared to our numbers in the workforce. You look at all of the races, they're above parity, or relative numbers in the workforce. They're promoted at higher rates than Asians. There are more Asians promoted just because there are more of us. In fact, in Silicon Valley, 47% of all tech workers are Asian. So there are more of us, so they see us. But if you look at the relative numbers, on a proportional basis, we're actually less represented than all of the races in management. Okay. So if you that's what this chart says. That's why we say that we're the most represented as a number, 47% in Silicon Valley. So they're most likely to be hired into actually not just in the Bay Area, most likely to be hired into white collar jobs in the Bay Area, the least likely to be hired into management of any other race.
Okay.
And that's surprising. Okay. Now, so the data says that whatever's happening, we don't understand what we need to do to be managers, and in particular, executive managers. So back to your question, what are we not doing?
Yep, the values and traits that we need to have.
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to say is that the advice that people have been giving you about working hard to be promoted is totally wrong. Is totally wrong. And I'm not saying working hard is a bad thing, it's a good thing. But if you're an engineer or you're a marketing person and all you're doing is working hard and showing you're a great engineer, okay, a great individual contributor. If I'm a manager and I know you like to do that, I'll keep you doing that as long as I can. Because you don't tell me otherwise. And because I don't think you want to do otherwise. That's the implicit bias. That's the stereotype of Asian. You love working. And you're showing me you love working because you're working harder. So you must love what you're doing. So people who tell you work harder and get ahead, that's part of the reason that we haven't made any progress, because people don't know. People don't know, or they don't, or I'll say it this way, or people don't understand the real dynamic. What they don't understand, and what you typically hear when people do journeys is, I was the best, blah, 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 blah. So just work hard, because that's what I focus on. What they don't tell you is that they had other factors going on as well. Okay, and that's the part that people aren't telling you. So all the advice you're getting from all the other people, again, it's great, but it'll never get you to the next level. Okay, and certainly what stops, and more than anything, it really stops at, and really it shows more than anything else when you get to the executive level. Okay, because working hard is irrelevant at my level. It's great, but in terms of that, if that's all I'm good at, I never get it. What's more important is ability to have organizational influence. That is to say, and the best example, and I'll move down to the manager level. When as you're going through the ranks as an engineer or a technical person, a finance person, whatever, what you know is really important. Okay, it's what you do. Okay, and your work product is what you do or things around you that so you know basically. Okay. But as you go higher and higher, what's important are those people who work around you. Okay, and how much you influence them. Right, as a functional manager, and you generally know what you're doing. Okay, at a certain point, the work product is things for the company, right? And you have to deal with people in sales, okay? And you want to be sure that people in sales know what they're doing and can sell your product. You want to be sure that the marketing people know what you're doing. You want to be sure that the manufacturing people, or the finance people, or accounting people, right, or business development people. They're all your peers. Okay, and they're all working just as hard as you, and they have their own things to do. And most of the time, what you're trying to do when you're a general manager is have people do things for you more than they're doing. And getting to do that has zero to do with what you know, has zero to do with how hard you're working.
Mm-hmm.
So the most important thing is understand that at that point, you're trying to have organizational success. Not your success, organizational success. And organizational success has less to do with what you're doing. It's important what you do and what your organization does. But unless the other parts of the organization are working with you for that success, you'll fail. If you build a great product and sales guys don't sell it, or go to the wrong customers, or don't know how to sell it, you fail.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing folks don't have the product done on time when you need it, when your customer orders it, you fail. Doesn't matter how well your product is. So at that point, so people are looking for leadership skills like that. So the question is this: in lower levels, then, when I'm looking for leaders, I'm looking not for people working at their butt off as hard as they can. That's important, right? But can you learn these other skills too? Do you want to learn these other skills too? Can you deal with relationships, right? Can you see the big picture? And if all you're doing is working and not showing me you want to learn those things, then you will say exactly where you are. And that is fundamentally the first problem that people have in this community is people giving the wrong advice. Because people giving this advice don't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
These are large organizations. That has to do is another story I love to tell. And that's cultural, okay? And part of it's cultural is just so I tell this story. At Stanford, we had in one year we had a panel with a general manager from China and the CEO of Airbus Japan. And at Stanford, we talk about what it's like to rise in the U.S. Right? They said, so how do you get to be CEO in China? And the general manager runs a factory in Shanghai. Said, you do what the big boss says.
Yes, I understand that. So different from America. Yeah.
Right? How do you get to be a CEO in Japan? He says, you're the last man standing, which means you don't take risks. You keep your head down. You hope everybody else gets shot, and you're the last man standing. Don't take risks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's not how things work in the United States. So if you grew up in Japan or have Japanese parents, first generation, you're brought up with a culture that says, be careful, right? Don't take risks. Or if you're from China, you do what you're told, right? Mm-hmm. Just like you remember my story about sending email out to these people and saying, let's talk about this. And they come back with, do I have permission? Did the
To
big
talk
boss
about
tell me
it.
I can do this?
Okay.
No. So that's what people are looking in the United States. That's what people are looking for. Can you learn those skills? Do you want to learn those skills? And that's the second problem that we have, is that we are hesitant to ask for what we want because we're afraid people will say no, and also to ask for what you want is not in the Asian culture of really you're being too forward, too aggressive, and too demanding. That's not, people say if I work hard, my work will show that I'm good enough to do it. No, you have to ask for it. Well, so what I'm looking for is people who is you have to ask for that. If you're showing it, you have to ask, how do I learn to do more? How do I learn to, I want to be a manager. How do I learn to be a manager? How do I, right? And so we're reluctant to do that because number one, we're afraid to say, people say no. And number two, you're afraid that you'll be perceived as too ambitious, which is not countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the culture working against us, or our learned behaviors work against us. What we learned, what our parents taught us, right? Be quiet, and you'll do just work hard.
Yeah, don't rock the boat, right?
Don't rock the boat and get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that's not the way it works in big companies.
Mm-hmm.
So all the things your mother and father taught you will get you so far, but you soften the data, it only gets you so far.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our problem. And again, I don't want to only blame us. It's also the other problem in that people have certain assumptions about the modern minority of being quiet and good workers. So the problem is not only that we're afraid to ask for more, but because people assume we don't want any more. Whereas it may not for other people, right? For non-Asians, they don't assume that for non-Asians.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're okay. If they're white and they have somebody white working on them, they think they know what white mentality is, and so we're not giving the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That's our problem. Again, that's our problem and their problem for assuming that.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much for pointing this out. So we have disadvantage from two sides, right? One is others perceive us that we're not capable because of our culture boundary, but cultural limitation. And the second thing is because that's what we have been trained. We're not been trained to speak up. Like I mentioned to you, right? At work, when I was working as an engineer or as a manager, I'm like speaking up, show up, and express it. When I go home, I shrink, right? I am not able. It's not that I'm not able, but I feel that I was not allowed to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's great. Thank you. Recently, we see more and more Indian.
Mm-hmm.
They are also Asian, right?
Mm-hmm.
But more Indian moving up to the C-suite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the Chinese, because in the Silicon Valley, the majority of the two races that are dominant in the Silicon Valley is Indian and Chinese.
Yep.
Maybe more Chinese than the Indian, right?
As a number, yeah.
As a number, yes. But why did the Indian were able to move further than the Chinese? Do you have any other input or perspective about it?
Well, I think first of all, the assumption is right. I looked at the numbers. I looked at the number of executives in Silicon Valley in the 25 largest companies in 2000, and then looked at again at the I believe it was 2012, either 2011, 2012, I think. And what I found was in 2000, 7% of the executives in the 25 largest companies in the Bay Area, not the large 25 companies in the Bay Area, 7% of the executives, as identified in their financial filings, were Asian. Okay, it was 6%. 6% East Asian, mostly Chinese, in the U.S. 6% East Asian, and 1% South Asian, or Indian. Okay, so 7% total, 6% East and 1% South. I looked at 2012, and the percentage had gone from 7% to 12%. Okay, and it was original 6%, essentially Chinese, 1% Indian. Then it went from 7% total to 12% total. And it was in 2012, of the 12%, it was 6% Chinese, 6% Asian, Indian.
Oh wow! Okay, so now we are equal.
All the growth had gone to Indians. Okay. So perception is real. That not just anecdotal data, because you have people like the head of Google and that sort of thing, and others. But it took the raw data. It's true. Okay. The other thing I want to point out, however, is there's still even looking at Indian numbers, they're still underrepresented relative numbers in the workforce. So both Chinese and Indian, East and South Asians, are still both underrepresented. Okay, so don't assume they're doing so great that they're better than anybody. Okay, they're still underrepresented. Okay, something problem. So my comment is, and there's no, I haven't seen any research on this. I have talked to a number of Indians about this, and we have this open conversation at community meetings and stuff. And my view is this: there are three reasons. First reason about why they've been successful. Number one, by and large, a lot of them came in. The Indian migration to the Silicon Valley started kind of at the same time after 1965, which was the a relaxation of immigration laws. A lot of Indians came to the United States for education, and some did very well in the beginning of Silicon Valley. So very few in the beginning, but they all came same time. And those who were successful, they knew each other. So it was a very small community. Okay, and because there's a very small community, and they saw themselves as really new in Silicon Valley, a few leaders got together and said, we need to help the next generation of Indians coming in. And so they accepted the responsibility of being community leaders and did things when they were successful in their startups, started funding other Indian startups and created an organization called TIE, which is still the most successful Asian American organization, professional organization in Silicon Valley. So one thing was that they all came together and had a small network, because there was only a small network. The important thing was that they saw themselves community leaders and helped the next generation. And they became role models for more and more people as community leaders. And they built TIE as a network of Indian American leaders. Chinese community was split into three parts. The old Chinese who came in early, the Hong Kong Chinese, the Taiwanese Chinese, and the mainland Chinese. They all came in different ways, and they didn't have these built-in networks. Okay, so unlike the Indians who came in one large way, and had a network, they knew each other, and a lot of them from the same schools, IIT in India. But they had something in common. We had a lot of differences in our community as we grew up. Okay. Because Hong Kong didn't talk they all spoke different languages, right? Taiwanese didn't talk the mainland. In fact, they considered them enemies. So different, and so that's part of the reason. The other reason, honestly, there were no Chinese leaders who stepped up as community leaders to said, let's do something for the whole community and help next generation. So you look at, the Indians they saw themselves as one community and wanted to help, and leaders who got together to help the community. I don't see that even now in the Chinese community. So our leaders, I don't want to blame anybody, but dynamic was that we're so focused on ourselves and whether it's the Hong Kong or the Taiwanese or the mainland Chinese or the Tsinghua University people or the Beijing University people, they didn't extend it and say that we need to help the next community. And as a result, there were no outstanding community role models. So people could see that I can make it too, and how do I get there? And they didn't help each other. We still don't help each other that much. So so I think the Indians did things right. We should learn from that experience because we're not doing that right. Our community is still disaggregated. Our community is still pulled together into small organizations, right? But there's no large organization like this. But there's no large organization that pulls the whole community together. And until we do that, we and the Chinese or Vietnamese, and let's think this way: the Vietnamese community works the Vietnamese community, right? They don't connect with the There's no Asian American community.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, and I feel that way. I say, why are we so separated?
And so until we feel ourselves, and I think it is difficult because Vietnamese is different than Chinese, and again, Hong Kong was different. Hong Kong speaks a different language than Taiwan or mainland.
Well, we speak English here, right? Why not use English as a common language? And we consider ourselves, like I say, I feel that in my generation, and I want other Asian to see that we are not Asian, we are not American, we are Asian American. And Asian, I use the word Asian as globally. You're not Chinese, you're not Vietnamese, you're not Hong Kongese and things like that. You're not Taiwanese, right? It's Asian. So
anyway, so that's what they've done successful that we have not. They've seen themselves as community, and we have not pulled together as community.
Is there any organization right now that trying to help the Asian community get together and support each other and mentoring?
Not yet. There are people trying. I'm trying with other people trying, but there hasn't been. No, I don't see it. Not yet. What can I say?
I appreciate your insight a lot, Buck. Would you give us your top 3 recommendations to young Asian American professionals who want to be in the C-suite someday?
Okay. Well, despite what I said about working hard, you definitely work hard. I mean, when you're a young professional, you have to establish your reputation. That's the first thing. Second thing is that understand that when you're working, I'll say it this way: when you're working, understand that what's important is not just what your boss knows, but what everybody around your boss knows. There's piece of advice is this. I'll tell you a quick story. I'll just tell you this story. So there's somebody tells this story who became eventually one of the head partners at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. He said whenever they would assign him different offices, and he said when he would start in a new office, he'd look around the office and he asked this question: who can affect my career? Who makes decisions who will affect my career? And I want to be sure that they know what I'm doing. Okay. And the reason that's important is because is that the way the promotions work is that all the managers get in a room and they all I'll just tell you how director promotions work at Cisco. So I'd be in a room with a general manager, and there are probably 10 or 15 of us in the room. I'd be sitting with our boss, who was Jay Shulau, and we'd have each of us maybe have 1 or 2 recommendations for promotion from senior manager to director. So maybe you'd have 10, 15 people that you wanted to promote, and you had 3 or 4 promotions you could get. So you have to choose. So I remember one case where I put up somebody, and 3 or 4 people in the room said, yeah, I know this person. He did really well. He worked in sales. His problem. I know he's really smart. Blah blah blah. And I remember one instance where, so one of my peers put up a person, and he said, this person is smart, done good work, and then all this stuff. And Jay Street say, okay, did anybody else want to say something? And no one said a word. And whereas 4 or 5 people sit in the room said, yeah, this guy's a good guy. And so guess who got the promotion? My guy who 3 or 4 people knew versus the one person that no one knew. So understand that it's not just your manager who has input on your promotions as much as your manager's peers as well. So think of it this way: who given that understanding, okay, who's going to support your manager when he or she makes that promotion recommendation? Okay, so when you're working hard and all you're doing is working hard, and the only person who knows what you're doing is your manager, right? Because all you're doing is working hard. Okay, you're at a disadvantage if somebody's working just as hard as you are, and also talking to other people as well. And that happens one or two ways. When you're in a meeting with your manager's peers, if you're not saying anything, they don't learn anything about you, right? Whereas the person who does says something in those meetings, then they know whether you're good or bad because they hear what you're saying. So let's be sure you understand that this process of getting promotions has as much to do with who you know as what you do. Because unless they know what you do, then they don't know you've done anything at all. Okay, that's the. Go ahead.
And that's the second one. What's the third one? Third recommendation.
Third recommendation is you need to ask for what your manager needs to know what you want. Okay. Rather than letting your work speak for itself. You have to ask for, I'd like to know more about this. I'd like an assignment on that. Ultimately, I want to be a manager. What need skills? Where are my weaknesses? What I need to do? And so they can try to help you, because unless they know, again, I tell people, your manager may be a good person, but they're probably not a mind reader. They can't help you if they don't know what you want.
That's right.
Okay, and so asking is not. Again, it's hard for a lot of agents to ask because it's perceived as being too ambitious. Okay. And again, the other reason people don't ask is they're afraid people can say you don't deserve it, right? But understand, in this environment, your manager is not like your teacher and grading you. Your manager is there, at least a good manager, are there supposed to help you. They're supposed to, if you're a good employee, their goal is to keep you in the company, keep you challenged and motivated so you stay in the company. And what you say, basically, in order for me to stay in the company, I really like to be a manager. They will try to do that. They will try to keep you there as long as possible. But ultimately, if they say no, you don't have to be a manager, their concern is not that you're unhappy. Their concern is you're going to leave the company because you can't get what you want. So understand, from my perspective, if I'm a manager, I don't want to say no unless I want to lose you. So understand my perspective as a manager, and you ask me that, I don't say no because I don't want to say no because it's my job, because I don't think you're ready. When I say no, I'm afraid you're going to go somewhere else where someone would say yes. Okay, that's always my fear, and so that is certainly one difference between East Asians and South Asians. The South Asians are more willing to ask for what they want, and that's a big difference. Okay.
Yeah, somebody mentioned to me about that too. That the more Indian are asking for mentorship, right? Where Chinese never ask somebody to be a mentor for them.
That's because when you ask in the Chinese perspective, that's a sign of weakness, not aspiration. You don't know it. You're supposed to know it. right? That's the working harder and getting it done stuff. So if I can prove that I know it all, I can get ahead. And the answer is no, that's not right. If you don't ask for something, it's right, then you won't get ahead. That's why I say that all the advice people are getting is totally wrong.
So last question. So I know that the viewer and the listeners are getting a lot of stuff from this interview. What if they want to get in touch with you? How do they do that via social media?
LinkedIn or Facebook. Just look me up on LinkedIn or Facebook. That works.
Look for Buck G?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And until next time, live life loud.
Great.
Thank you, Buck.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.